Hi, so welcome back. I'm just making a video today to kind of follow up on what I said in the last video about the fact that I was spent the last number of years chasing self-worth and why that really doesn't work for me. So today I want to talk about why I self-reject, what self-rejection really means for me, and why I do it. And I also want to talk about all of the ways that I'm trying to overcome this self-rejection and kind of accept myself and what self-acceptance means and what it doesn't mean. So as I was setting up this video, I noticed just how overpowered the iPhone camera, selfie camera actually is. You can take 4K videos at 60 frames per second, which is a little bit overpowered. That would take up so much space on my computer that I think editing it would be really hard. So I've decided that I'm not going to film in 4K. As tempting as that is, I just think it's impractical. So the reason I self-rejected was because up to only really a year or two ago, my life was pretty awful, was pretty painful. I experienced so much rejection from other people, and everything that I did in my life never really amounted to things that I could feel proud of. They amounted to sort of always a sense of disappointment. And so all of this disappointment and all of the history that I have experienced over my life, I looked at that and I said, wow, my life really, really sucks. It's really bad. I don't want this life. I want a different life. That has been my mental process for the last, 15 years or more. It really is only in the last year or two that I've come to grips with that mental process and been trying to work through it. I've started to come to the other side of that now, which is such a huge relief. I feel like it's behind me, or the majority of it is behind me. I'm still struggling to sort of figure out what I want to do next. What self-acceptance really looks like for me is being able to accept everything that happened to me in the past as factual. It actually happened. It's true. It was very painful. I felt ashamed of my life. I felt that I didn't want to live that life. I wanted a different life. And because I was identifying with that past as that person, as the person who was that history, I felt bad about myself. You see, there's a difference between feeling bad about what happened to us and then identifying with that. And then we kind of internalize the feelings so that we feel bad about ourselves. And that's what I did. I internalized my history and I identified myself as the thing that was bad. So I wanted to become a different person. Now that's a really, really subtle, but very, very powerful mental mechanic. And once you can kind of see how it's operating, you can kind of start to deconstruct it. And it's really important that you deconstruct it. And it takes a lot of work. And it's not simple because it's like you're in a box and you're trying to make your way out of the box. And the box is really, really thick. It has really, really thick walls. And you don't know where the end of the box is. You don't know where the outer shell of that box is. So you just have to keep digging and digging and digging and digging. And it's only when you look back that you actually discover, oh yeah, I'm actually outside of the box now. Amazingly. It's only when you look back that you actually finally connect the dots and see, oh yeah, I was doing all of that work all along and I didn't realize I was climbing out of that really narrow, desperate sense of self-hatred. And you don't know you're out of it until you look back and you realize that you're out of it. I haven't done any therapy. Well, not much therapy. I've done a little bit of therapy in the past. But the most important tool that I've used and that I am using right now is journaling. I think journaling is such an such a powerful tool. It has really helped me to sort of kind of really blow up all of the details of my life, to examine them in very, very fine detail, and examine my emotions in really fine detail so that I can kind of start to connect the dots between things. And it's really only in the last few weeks that all of that has started to come together. When I kind of happened across, or when the algorithms, the Google and the YouTube and the whole lot of kind of algorithms kind of surfaced for me Adlerian psychology. So I've become a bit of an Adlerian nut, I have to say. The idea that we can actually look at our own histories and reinterpret them so that they have a different meaning is really, really powerful. For the first time, I feel like I actually have control over what my past and what my history means. And I've only been able to do that because I'm able to distance myself from the facts of that history, and I'm no longer identifying with with the past. Because when you're identifying with the past, you can't really change it. You can't really change what it means. Well, we can never change the past, but we can change what it means. But we can't change the meaning of our past or of our history if we are identified with it. And that's a bit of a paradox. On the one hand, we have to accept what happened to us, and we can't change our life in the present until we can let go of the past. So letting go and acceptance are actually the same thing. Now that is a paradox. How can we accept something but at the same time let go of it? Self-acceptance is about letting go of our identification with the things that have happened to us, and identifying with something else that's not quite that. We identify as the person who has experienced those things, but what has happened doesn't actually change who we are fundamentally. Something like that. I'd like to explore that topic in greater detail, but I think it's outside of the scope of this video. Self-acceptance is not unconditional. You know, there's lots of talk on the web, and lots of gurus will say, you know, you just kind of have to accept everything about yourself. That's not true. There are things about you that aren't really part of who you are. They're just kind of trauma responses. They're conditioned responses. And they aren't really who you are. Those are the parts of yourself that actually are keeping you stuck in your identification with the past. To break with this identification with the past, you have to deconstruct all of the habits and all of these conditioned responses that you've had, all of the trauma responses that are kind of baked into your personality. There's a karmic element to the personality, and we feel that we have to keep the story that we've been telling ourselves going. You don't have to keep that old story going. You can stop that. You can break with that story and you can start to tell a new story. And really what self-acceptance amounts to is the recognition that when I look at my life and look at my history, I can now understand that what happened to me isn't really about me. It's not my fault. I wasn't responsible for that, but it still affected me. I had to live inside of a reality that was kind of constructed by people who were much more powerful than me. And I didn't have much control over that reality, and I felt powerless. So in order for me to survive inside of that reality that was constructed, I had to identify myself as a person who played a role in that reality. And that is a way of surviving, and our ego creates that role that we play. And now that I look back on that, I can say to myself, yes, actually, that was a really, really clever thing to do. And I'm very grateful that my ego was able to do that for me. But I don't need that role anymore. I don't need to play that role anymore. I don't need to identify with that anymore. As long as I continue to identify with the roles and the conditioned responses and the personality that was created in order to keep me safe in the past, I can't move on. I can't change. I have to accept that who I am and who I was back then are different. Who I am now and who I was back then are different persons. And that there are a different set of circumstances at play now that I need to respond to. And it's very scary to let go of our old roles and our old personalities, because those roles and those conditioned responses and all of that, and all of our identification with those roles and with that reality that existed back then, they kept us safe. That role kept us safe, and it's really hard to let go of it. But here in the present, it's become really obvious that that role is no longer serving me. So I have to become someone new. I have to have new behaviors, and I have to think in a new way, and I have to feel in a new way, respond to the present, rather than to continually hearken back to the past, trying to keep that old story going, because that is an old story. And today I need to tell a different story. So that's really probably everything that I want to say about what I've been doing. It's kind of a really brief summary. I hope that what I've said is clear. When I'm editing this, I'll make sure that it's as clear as I can possibly make it. I'd like to continue to make these videos. I think they're really helpful, and I'd appreciate any feedback that you might have. Perhaps you have some experiences of your own that you'd like to give voice to, and maybe we might find a common ground there or a connection. If what I've said has been helpful, or if anything resonates with you, I'd be very grateful to hear your feedback on that. So I'll leave it there.